Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 776, Richard's here and we've got lots to talk about. We're talking about the 20H2 and that's going out to Windows users and an update that's coming for that as well. We're talking about the latest dev build as well, 20241. Talking about 8 years of the Surface. We'll be reminiscing back at the Surface RT, which I've got one of those here, and looking back how things have changed in that time. We'll be talking about Surface Duo, those over there. We're talking about the Raspberry Pi, Risc Os, and all sorts of stuff. So let's get straight to Richard. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Okay, great, thank you. It was really good fun having Jerry on the show last week, but it's good to have you back.
It was a great show.
Yeah, it's very nice to talk to Jeremy, very enthusiastic and nice guy. So it was good fun, that. And I believe you're running a slightly different setup tonight. Your audio sounds slightly different, still sounding clear, but a bit of a different setup.
Yes, I actually had to nuke my entire system from orbit. I eventually just gave up. It's a curse of too many insider builds. So I nuked my whole system from orbit. And then I realised I didn't have anything installed here to actually make it work. So I'm talking to you through the power of the iPad. Jason will be so happy. if he's not finished queuing for his iPhone 12 yet.
Yes, iPhone 12. Yeah, it's coming out soon, isn't it? Actually, you know what I've got up here, but don't tell me. There's an iPhone SE up there, but it's going to Father Christmas soon.
Is it? Ah, well,
for Mrs. Dixon.
Yeah, Mrs. Speed, she's very, very happy with her iPhone SE, and I'm very jealous because the thumbprint works on it. And yeah, I think I wish the thumbprint works on my iPhone X.
Yeah, so that's on the shelf up there, ready to go to Father Christmas. But yes.
So now we know that your wife does not listen to this podcast. Excellent.
No, absolutely no chance. No chance of that. A few weeks ago when I was on the Windows Insider webcast, I said, you can watch me live on Twitch. She's like, no, it's all right.
I'm also very impressed with the Surface Duo perched behind you as well. Very, very artful there.
Oh, yes, on my little stand that I've got there as well, which is a Windows Insider stand.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. So
I don't have one of those.
So yeah, we've got a few things I want to talk about. We've got some new builds. We've got 20H2 release. So I wanted to chat to you about that. We touched on it a little bit last week, but we'll talk about that. There's some Pi stuff that I wanted to ask you about and we can talk about, and some Duo stuff as well. Perhaps we start with looking at Surface. This week is the 8th anniversary of the launch of the Surface RT.
I'm surprised. It feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? A different world, really.
It does feel very much like a different world. And what I did today was I managed to search through, and I'll share my screen for the visual viewers. There we go. So I look back at my review from the original Surface RT. So I've got so I got the Surface RT when it came out with the type cover, and it came with the touch cover. Do you remember those days when Surfaces actually came with a keyboard?
Yeah. Yes, well, that said, the touch cover was pretty awful because my first one had a touch cover, and I very quickly upgraded to the top cover. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so you can even see my very shaky unboxing video from October 2012, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was the 26th of October it was released, but I actually think I got it a couple of days afterwards. Interesting to look back on the post as well, where I was very much framing the device as a replacement for the iPad. Rather than the sort of the 2-in-1 convertible that the Surface, certainly the Surface Pro, has become.
Well, exactly, which I think that's kind of where it was pitched, and that's almost a hangover that we get today, because let's face it, they don't come with a keyboard, but everyone will buy one with a keyboard. And so yeah, that's the thing is I think the original Windows 8 interface, as it appeared on the Surface RT, I think was actually better than what was on the iPad and other devices at the time. It just was very, very slick, very fluid, very fast. Just lacked the apps to make it useful, really.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I mentioned on the review. So I love the hardware. And I talked about that and sort of very much compared it with the iPad at the time. And now you would compare it with a PC perhaps. But anyway, then back then I was comparing it with the iPad weight and form factor and everything. But I did mention that, with running ARM, you couldn't install the application. You had to get it from the store. And I think I said that hopefully the inbox applications get improved, like the mail app, which I found was very basic, which I'm not sure it really has changed that much. And hopefully we'll get more store apps soon, because that's what the platform needs. And they never did come, and that was the eventual downfall of
that's right.
Windows RT.
And of course, it did ship with Office as well. So I think there was very, very much a very confusing message, because you had the very nice touch first interface, which was the first time that Windows they actually made sense. But then if you wanted to use say Office or Word, which came with it, you'd be dropped back into scary old Windows desktop. So I think a lot of users got very confused, and I know a lot got returned based on the fact that people assumed that they'd be able to run their Windows apps. And of course, you couldn't. It was a whole different thing. Although I don't know if you know, it's still supported. Windows RT 8.1 support doesn't run out until 2023.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, well, but I think isn't one of the issues with it, I remember, is Internet Explorer is not supported on many things.
No, that's correct. I mean, it's. I think it's going to remain supported as long as the edition of Windows it's running on is supported. I think that's kind of the rule that they're working to, because it is a component of Windows. So I think it's going to keep being supported. But yeah, they would really like you to not use it anymore. Please don't use IE. Move on. Anything IE.
And of course, and here we have a Surface. This is a cheat.
Oh,
this
wow.
is the Surface RT2. I came to look for it tonight. I couldn't find my RT. I think it's in the loft, but I haven't got rid of it. But there it is. Lovely device with detachable keyboard, which this is the type cover.
Oh, I'm flashing back here.
And there's the very lovely. This is running in Windows 8.1, Windows RT 8.1. I think they called it in the end, didn't they?
Yeah.
With the full screen interface, looking lovely as it did, and I guess a bit of desktop action. Let's see if we can get that. Nope. There you go. Look at that. Look, actually, it looks like the touchscreen is not working neither. looks actually like nothing is working on there.
Oh, you sure it's just not an illuminated bit of black plastic?
Yeah. The Windows button is on there as well. Do you remember the Windows button on the? Yeah. That was a mandatory feature. All right, that's working now. Yeah. But what I used to, I loved the device. I only used it really. Oh, it's shutting down. That's why. I think probably because the power's. I've just powered it on. It was flat. But I actually used all the blog posts and everything else. It was great for that. Aside from sort of video editing, I think, or audio editing, it was a pretty good device. And it's interesting when I look back. At the time, I was using an iPad and a MacBook Air because I got sort of sick of the thick, chunky Windows laptops. I had a few tablet PCs, but I went to the Air because I wanted that light device, and that's what we've got now. I'm using a Surface laptop, which is effectively that nice slim device that we got. So I wonder where we'd be without the Surface brand, whether we would have devices like some of the Dells that we've got, which are HPs, which are all really nice devices, whether we would have that good quality devices without Surface brand.
In a word, I'd say no. I mean, obviously, for all their faults, the Surface devices, as from the outset, were a good education, I think, for other companies on how to build nice Windows machines instead of the big clunky, horrible plastic laptops we used to have, desktops. Microsoft, I think, just got tired and said, "Here, this is how you should build a Windows device. There's no reason for it to be a horrible, big, clunky device." And as you say, we are where we are now, mainly, I think, due to the example set by the Surface devices. Yeah,
and I very much liked my RT. I only got rid of it in the end when I replaced it with the Surface Pro 3, and that was because RT was going out of support on Windows 10. It wasn't going to run on there, so. The Surface Pro 3, I think, is where the Surface Pro line sort of came into. Was really successful. It was really the best, the ultimate device. I think the Surface Pro 3 was probably the first one of the Surfaces. It was really a good, solid device.
That's right, because the RTs were, the Surface RTs were quite a nice form factor, which did carry on through into I think the 3, whereas the original Surface Pros were actually quite clunky and thick, weren't they?
Yeah, they were chunky. Yeah,
From a really, quite a thick and also a very small screen. It wasn't is it 3:2 screen, the 3:2 ratio? I think now I can't remember what they are at the moment. I think it was more of a narrower screen back then. So yeah, and they used to run hot, and the battery was bad. And they weren't very good. But the Surface Pro 3, I think, was far superior.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm very sad because I actually broke my Surface Pro 3 screen because it was a really good device. I must admit, I've never had one. I had the 2 RTs, but I never moved on to the Pros after that. Yeah, I love the Surface devices. I think they're great, and I think eight years. It's amazing how things have changed, and how the market's moved on, and now we've got the devices like the Surface Go, and which is kind of really the spiritual successor of the original RT.
It is, except you can run all your stuff. Basically.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see how Microsoft still have, many of the issues that were raised in that device are still apparent now even with the Surface Pro X with the compatibility.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this backwards compatibility, I think, is Microsoft's sort of Achilles heel, because they tried to make a clean break with the Surface RT in many ways. You couldn't take anything with you. And of course, with the Pro X and the Windows and ARM, you can, in theory, have your Windows apps come. You can bring along your 32-bit Windows apps and soon to be 64-bit Windows apps. But the problem is they run as though they're wading through treacle. So yeah, it's a real challenge from Microsoft, because they tried the clean break and that didn't work, and now they're trying the backwards compatibility, and we'll see how that goes. I think Windows 10X obviously is the future, where hopefully all this stuff will work better. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and it looks like that's probably going to at least initially launch without backwards compatibility.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, so that's my little tribute to the Surface line, and
I miss my RT. I tell you, the RT was really good actually as a device to give to a relation or whatever, because there was almost zero support required. As long as the relation could get into Word and things, they were happy, and that was it. It was fine, and it would never get viruses. It never slowed down. It was always perfect. So I do miss it really.
My son's got. I bought them down for Christmas. I think that would have been that year. I would guess it would be December that year, and they never broke because they couldn't break them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good devices. So moving more up to date, do you see that the Duo, which one of them I have over here, that got a price reduction on the Microsoft Store?
Yes, it did. I saw that. It was dropped by $200 because I guess it's been such a sort of way success. Yeah,
I think this is the danger of when you're an early adopter, you end up paying more, because I noticed the phone that I bought, the Note, that's been reduced as well. So
exactly, yeah. I think
you have.
The problem with the Duo is it always was a very, very expensive device for what it actually is. Rather, it is. I mean, even now with the discount, it's still expensive. You compare it to, say, the iPhone 12, which is about to hit stores, and the iPhone 12 is still cheaper, and it's arguably a better bit of kit. It's even got, dare I say it, 5G.
Well, Apple invented it, yeah.
Of course, yeah. Apple they're always innovating. At some point they'll innovate so far they'll innovate the thumbprint again, I imagine. The Duo is an interesting device. I mean, I'm looking forward to hopefully a version 2. I mean, I understand a version 2 is in the works, and it's just nice to see some innovation there in terms of the form factor. I can see you're waving it around there, saying, "Look at my Duo." There we go, fantastic. But the problem is, and it is a problem, even with a discount, it's still very expensive for what it is. And also, the software has. I mean, they've been frantically updating. I saw the launcher got a refresh, I think, this week, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've had a few launcher. What they've done with the launcher as well is, I think, prior to last week, the launcher was a specific version for the Duo. What they've done now is the launcher actually is the one that's in the Google Play Store, the normal one and the beta one as well. So I'm on the beta channel, so I'm automatically getting the beta now.
Okay, cool. So I mean, it kind of feels like the hardware feels like it had been around for a while, because it is very much sort of they had to really launch it then because it was already borderline out of date at launch time, and it feels like they've amended the software to work on it, but it's not quite finished yet. So hopefully there'll be a version 2 next year, and that'll be the one that I think will be the one where they get everything right.
I mean, I found so I put my sim in it, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and the sim is still in here.
Well done.
And I've noticed I was carrying the note around as well, but now I only tend to take that if I'm maybe I'm going out and I think I might be taking some photos, if I'm going for a walk, I think I'll get some pictures while I'm out. So that's the only time I take it now. Contactless payment, I'm using the Android Wear for that, so that sort of gets around that. And plus I've got my card with me usually as well. This, for photos, is actually pretty good. When I was out on Sunday, I actually took pictures on both of them just to get some comparisons. And daylight shots, you're out in the woods taking pictures of rivers and things, it's absolutely fine for that. And you have to get used to the motions for getting the camera going, because obviously the camera's here at is on the front facing one. So when you launch the camera, it using it like this, it's in selfie mode automatically. So that that's the default effectively. So when you want to use it as a camera, you have to first kind of rotate it. If you want it landscape, rotate it into landscape. And then if you see, as I close it now, it's still in selfie mode. So then you flip it over like that, and it detects it, and now it's swapped it over. And so now I've got it in. So you've got to understand how those motions work, otherwise it can get confused because it doesn't know which way round you're taking it. You've got to flip it so it understands those motions. Otherwise, how would it know? Because there isn't a manual toggle button. But it actually does work, but it's not the most convenient thing. So I did some pictures with it and a couple of selfies, and they're all fine. But if you want to get some really nice pictures, then it's not a comparison to the note, so that's when I would carry the note with me. But for basics, it's fine.
Yeah, but of course, in photos, it's not what Microsoft designed the thing for.
No.
It's designed as a productivity, almost an extension of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
Yeah, what I did do with it last week is I did all my work's Teams meetings on it, and no one noticed, that I wasn't on a laptop, and I used the earbuds and put it in like a desktop mode with the Teams on the screen, and it worked perfectly fine, and it was actually really nice. And then we were on a call, and I said, I'll go and ask someone over there, and I actually just went, I'll just take this with me, and I just took the phone with me, and it was like, oh wow, that's been how are you doing that? So actually it works really good for some like Teams. So productivity is great. I really like it for evening sofa surfing, just catching up on a bit of where I would perhaps maybe I would get the Surface Go out to do a bit of reading on Twitter or Reddit or something like that. This is really nice for that. Doesn't strain the eyes at all as well, so I can use it without really needing to put glasses on as well. So it's a really nice device for that. There's a couple of things I find, with it being shut is quite nice. It's closed and gone away, but then if you've got notifications, then that can be awkward. So that's when having the wearable really helps.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, nice device. I'm really enjoying using it. I don't feel any pressure to switch Sims over. I just use this for photos, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but it's a nice device to play with.
Oh, cool.
Now, moving on, we had a few Windows releases. So since you were last on, Microsoft did actually push out 20H2.
Yes, didn't that happen while you were actually speaking to Jeremy, I think?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, last Tuesday it popped out. Yeah, just as we were recording.
They took it on purpose. Yes, 20H2 is here. The Windows 10 October 2020 update is here. There's not much to it, really, is there? It's followed the same pattern as last year, which I think is a good pattern, where we had the Big Bang release earlier in the year, the May update, 2004, and this update is little more than the jumped up community update. And to be honest, you've probably got most of it. If you're running 2004, you'll have most of this on your machine already, just not been turned on yet. So really, what this does is Microsoft decides that your machine is okay for it, and then flicks the switch, and away you go. I think you may find it. Not everyone's going to get it straight away. For example, I've only got it on one of my machines so far. The other two have yet to receive it. because I think they are being quite careful throttling how it gets rolled out as well. So you can go and check for updates. It may or may not be there yet. I can only assume that's because they are being very cautious. There's not many issues with it, certainly compared to the previous release of Windows, where it didn't even work on some Surface devices. This one, the is much shorter. Just some audio issues by the looks of it. So, I guess what's the big thing? Edge, I guess the Chromium Edge is now in the box, which is good. They've done some polishing.
I like the start menu. Yeah, I think that's made a big difference. The transparent effect on it. I think I really like that.
Yeah, so I mean that's really it. There's
notifications.
Notifications. You have to say logos on notifications, so you can see where they came from. So there are a few
alt tabbing.
Alt tabbing showing in theory the edge tabs. I think is how it should work. And there's also been some improvements of when you detach it for if you detach a screen on a 2-in-1 device like the Surface we've been talking about, things work better there. And also I think they've decluttered the taskbar for new logins, where if you are starting up a machine for the first time, your taskbar in theory is not quite so cluttered now. It's more tuned to what you're going to be doing with it. I think is thinking behind that. But all told, there's not a lot there. But the interesting thing with it, of course, it does get 30 months of servicing, unlike the 18 months that you get for the ordinary release of Windows. So, which I think is going to appeal to corporates. Obviously, it's not as long as the full-on long-term servicing channel, which goes on for 10 years, but that certainly makes life a lot easier for enterprises who are installing. And for enterprises, there are a bunch of things around in it too to make enterprises happy. Things like policy stuff. You've got the Windows Defender application guard. You've got improvements around the mobile device manager. So there are things, but all told, I think it's going to be a very quiet release. I've said it before, but hopefully it will be very quiet, much like last year, where it was little more than just an update. So it'll be very quiet. And of course, I think as this has happened, I believe the May 2020 update, 2004, has just become the most used version of Windows. I think it's just crept over the finishing line. So it's just as the October update comes out. So that should be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, it's hard to be too enthused about it. Except to say that I'm very happy that Microsoft have again adopted this approach, where they're doing it's about stability. I think it's going to be appealing towards for enterprises because there's nothing scary for those of us that remember what happened in 2018.
Yeah, and it even was offered to my Dell machine at work, my Dell laptop, which I was quite surprised of, because I expected the services to get it, which have got it, but I saw the Dell, and then what caught me out, I forgot I hadn't put 2004 on there, so I saw it was offered. I thought, oh, fine, I'll just do that because I've got like half an hour before or 20 minutes before I've got a meeting. I'll stick that on because I know it's a tiny update. But of course, I forgot I was running 1809 on that machine, and so I had to do the full image install. And that's one of the reasons why I was on Duo for Teams meetings, is because I left the machine building while I was on the Duo. So. Yes, it did catch me out on that, but once it's in, it works fine, and it makes the visual refresh is nice actually. I know many people won't probably else see much difference, but it's nice. It's certainly better. I think there's a lot of work to do to improve the visuals of Windows 10 to give it a sort of fresh, more modern look, but it's a start.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, if you were to compare it to say the first version of Windows 10, it's come on in leaps and bounds, really. So it's just it's all been a bit polished, a bit nicer. There's lots of things inside around the control panel as well, where things just are more consistent. You do still, if you aren't careful, drop into good old Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 without realizing, oh crikey, that's a scary dialogue. But lots of it, they've moved a lot more into the control panel, and even the control panel itself looks a lot nicer now. So it is good. And my goodness me, do they want you to use Edge? Whoa.
Yes, definitely, yeah. And they also released that on Tuesday, but since then we've had a patch which went out rather weirdly went to release preview and then to the beta channel.
Yeah, that was weird. This is the 19042.608. So this is a whole load of fixes actually. We're in this, and it's not. I don't think it's gone live yet, has it? It's just gone, as you say. It went to release preview first, and then to the beta channel, which is a strange order actually. It's kind of the wrong way around. And I think there's the only really exciting new thing in that was the Meet Now in Skype has now turned up in the taskbar, which is kind of an icon in the taskbar which you can click, and you can kick off without needing an account or login a Skype chat with sort of friends and family, which is a neat thing. And I guess their response to the dominance of Zoom,
which is strange because that's on the dev channel for a few weeks now. But I installed this update and it still hasn't popped up on my Surface laptop, which is on release preview. So they must be rolling out in phases, perhaps. That's
because they haven't said that it is being rolled out in phases. Normally, that they say it's being rolled out over coming weeks, but they've said it's there. It's in the update. The exact words were, "This update includes the following fixes."
Yeah. So it's not. Maybe it's a language thing as well. Maybe US only or something like that. But so I've got it here on my Surface Go, which is on Dev Channel, but on release preview on that device, it's not there.
Yeah, that is strange. I mean, there's also an awful lot of fixes in there too. I mean, a lot of fixes. A lot of fixes aimed again at enterprises. Although there were a few things that caught my eye, particularly around the Windows subsystem for the Linux as well. But there are a lot of fixes in there. Look, it's they managed it almost a week between releasing Windows 10 and then bagging out the first wave of fixes, which is interesting because those fixes aren't mentioned in the Windows Health dashboard either, are they?
No, but I suppose they'll come when it gets to the release. But that would be this would be the November update, I guess. The November patch Tuesday.
I guess so. I mean, I am finding I'm not entirely sure what the Windows Insider program is doing at the moment. It's just I'm getting more and more confused by these. I mean, the other question mark, of course, is when are we going to see 21H1?
Well, yes, that's another story, isn't it? But yeah, my guessing this will be the patch Tuesday patch.
Yeah, yes, which is kind of what you expect to see going through beta first, and then release preview. So, I mean, the level of detail in this list of things that they fixed is unusual for sure. Certainly compared to an patch Tuesday patch, but we'll see. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's a big long list. But I know they were putting out the patch Tuesday update on the release preview for a while, so I think that's perhaps what this is. And at the moment, beta is release preview, which leads on to the next thing, which you mentioned for some time now. The dev channel is not, Microsoft said, isn't tied to a specific build of Windows or a specific release of Windows, and the beta channel is. But at the moment, the beta and release preview in sync because the release has come out, but at some point now we must get the next build to go to the beta channel, but we don't know what that will be because we haven't we because of this mistake with the dev builds that they're not tied to a release, whereas beta is.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly right. Which is a little bit confusing. I mean, maybe there'll be another channel. I mean, I keep hoping that one day we'll see some 10x stuff appearing.
Yeah, which the rumours are that next year, so what would be 21H1, the first half of 2021, would be focusing on Windows 10X. And in the second half, so there won't be a major update to Windows 10 in the first half of next year, unlike the previous years. But the big update for Windows 10 will be later that year, so in effect 21H2. So maybe we'll see the beta channel become 21H1, which will be another minor update to Windows 10, and the dev channel will start firing up perhaps some new stuff for 21H2. But then, how do they get insiders to test Windows 10X? They must be self-hosting it, so they must be testing it internally. It'll be interesting to see, but they don't want to talk about it at the moment. Anyway, that's for sure.
No, they don't, do they? No. I mean, I would be very concerned if they do indeed do a major release, in the second half of 2021, because they've done some good work in the past 2 years, in 2019, 2020, in improving stability and quality. I would hate for them to do a big bang release the second half of the year without warning, or I don't know. I'm slightly concerned about the insider approach at the moment. It just seems to be a little bit confused as to what they're doing, and the kind of things they're putting in the dev channel, like the most recent insider build and dev channel, which is 2241. The kind of things in there are just not. I mean, I'm hoping there's more things happening under the hood, because let's face it, a theme-aware splash screen is not an exciting new feature.
Yeah, and this is what makes me speculate, and despite being a Windows insider, I don't have any inside knowledge on this, that these minor things that we're seeing are for the 21H1, and the bigger changes we're going to see soon, but they won't be coming until later the year. So in fact, the big updates that we've had of May and April in the first half of the year is going to be shifted later. So in fact, it's going to have more development time, and we'll see one more minor release before that. So for the stability, you might be okay, because we're not going to see this bigger release of Windows till later in the year rather than earlier.
We'll see. Hopefully they'll tell us before build.
Yeah, which is, there's some time to go in on that. And for Windows 10, Windows 10X testing, I really hope we get something. It would be great to have something before the end of the year to be able to play with and stick on a device. Have to be some perks from living through 2020.
Yes, indeed. And here am I, still in my shed at the end of my garden.
Yeah, that's right.
Since March.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so so Microsoft, do this for the Windows insiders. Give us Windows 10X images that we can install ourselves. But I'm guessing they've got they're very, very aware out there of bad PR from giving out features that maybe get pulled. So they err on the side of caution now, much more than they used to. Yes,
that's certainly been a change in tack, but I mean they've been burnt by that. You say they've announced features with much pizzazz and what have you, and then they have been pulled. And of course, they are, I think, still very wounded after the whole 2018 1809 fiasco. I mean, again, I still think they've done some good work since then in stabilizing things. Because if you'd asked me back then in October 2018 what the future for Windows held, I'd have said it's looking pretty bleak, really, actually, because it's just clearly it's out of control. The quality has gone because you've committed the ultimate crime in that you put out a release of Windows with deleted files. And that's just the ultimate. That's the biggest thing, the worst you can do. And but they do appear to have turned things around. I hope I'm right in that assumption, but it does certainly seem to be stabilised. So yes, we'll see what happens, Ian. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm hoping we might see some exciting things for Windows next year. Maybe we might see the Neo, but I certainly like to have even a single screen Windows 10X device would be nice, or some new UI stuff in Windows 10. I'd be quite happy to test that out.
I mean, to be honest, I would just like Windows 10 to continue stabilising. I'd like to see its memory footprint go down, and I'd like to see an end to any Windows 8.1 / Windows 7 dialogues in the system. That'd be it. I mean, I'd say focus on doing that. Focus on that. Stop fiddling around with things like Fluent, whatever else. Just standardise it, go through it, make sure everything is consistent and works well. And I mean, that's all I want to do, really.
Yeah, and World Peace as well.
World Peace would be good. I like World Peace, End of Poverty, and Vaccine Before Christmas. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay, so that's the end of your Miss World speech. Right, well, moving on to a different device that I wanted to get your thoughts on. Raspberry Pi Foundation released a new module last week.
They did. Oh yeah, the compute module.
I know you're a big fan of this. So what's the compute module, and what's the version 4 of it?
Okay, so the compute module is basically, it's a Raspberry Pi device, except it's in a form factor to make industrial users happy, because as you know, the Raspberry Pi, as envisaged, was an educational tool, a tool to get kids coding, all that good stuff. But of course, business looked and said, "Oh, this is great! It's a $35 computer that does everything. Fantastic!" So it's become quite an important part of the Raspberry Pi Foundation's business, really. And so they introduced a a version of the Pi on this form factor, and it was I think it used to be like a DDR DIMM sort of form factor. So they with the Compute Module 4, they've now changed that. It's the first time they've actually changed it. So it's actually kind of, it means if you've got any sort of the devices that use these compute modules, you're going to have to rethink. But there's good reasons for that, and that is things like there's a lot more data channels going through now, because you've got the 2 HDMI ports, you've got the PCI Express stuff, you've got, there's many more things on the Pi now than there used to be. And so it's basically a Pi 4 on this, again, smaller form factor. You've got like a gazillion configuration options, because you've got options for between 1 gig to 4 or 8 gigs of RAM. You could also go for either, I think, none, 8, 16 or 32 gigs of eMMC flash memory as well on the thing. So you've got a variety of things there. And they've also, I think this is possibly the first time they've put on their own onboard antenna for Wi-Fi and things as well, which I think that might be a first here. But it's it's great. It's basically a Raspberry Pi 4 for industrial applications. You'd stick it in things like edge devices. You'd put it in digital signage or whatever else. You got, again, for digital signage, it's great because you've got two outputs, two video outputs. And I have nothing more to say than that, apart from I think it's a great thing for the Pi Foundation. It's good to see these things getting out into the wild. There's many similar devices out there, I hasten to add, but obviously, if you've got, if you're used to working on Pis, and you can get an adapter board for these things, which will turn it into effectively a Raspberry Pi 4, because you don't have on the compute module all the interfaces that you'd expect to have. You don't have USB ports, the HDMI ports. You have to actually put those on yourselves via an extension board, which is where the industrial design comes in. But the Pi Foundation will give you they'll sell you for, I don't know, it's not a lot of money, it's $50. I think it's not a huge amount of money. They'll sell you an example board, which you can basically attach the compute module to, which will turn it into effectively a Raspberry Pi 4 for development purposes. So I've got nothing bad to say about it. I'm trying though. I'm trying.
And in terms of operating systems, what would you put on it?
Well, that's again the joy of the industrial thing is of course it's a Linux computer. It's an ARM-based Linux computer. So you've obviously got Raspberry in itself, which is their own cut-down version. There's other things like Ubuntu, and obviously there was some fairly big news for Raspberry Pioneers from Canonical with Ubuntu 2010, but they've been doing the Ubuntu server on there for a long time. You've been able to put IoT versions of stuff on there. I don't think Windows 10 IoT works on the Pi 4 yet, does it? It's only Pi 3. No,
it doesn't. No.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's a shame. I think that's
a real shame. That I'm not quite sure why that is. A change of strategy from Microsoft's side, I think.
Well, exactly. I mean, kind of they've got their own Linux device, haven't they, with Azure Sphere? So I don't know exactly what's going on there. I think it's a shame. However, there are lots and lots of distributions of Linux which you can put onto the Pi 4 compute module. So you're not short of options there. And of course, the Pi 4 itself. I mean, I actually used Ubuntu because you could do Ubuntu desktop. You could make 2004. Ubuntu 2004 could be made to run on the Pi 4 with a bit of fettling, but it wasn't overly happy. But last week, Canonical released Ubuntu 2010, also known as Groovy Gorilla, and that will do a full desktop on a Pi 4 now. Although they need 4 gigs to make it work properly, I believe. I've tried it on a 4 gig and an 8 gig Pi, and I have to say it is happier on an 8 gig Pi, but it does work on a 4 gig Pi, and it's pretty usable actually. You kind of forget that you are running on this little tiny, very inexpensive computer because it's got a kind of a full video. And the other thing that came out last week as well, which if you're a special nerd like I am, was the Risc Os 528 came out as well.
Yeah.
And that absolutely, I mean, that's been out on the Pi for a while. I think it's one of the very first operating systems that you could get on the Pi actually. But they brought out a Raspberry Pi 4 version, and that's brilliant. Absolutely flies.
So were you running? What was it that ran on that?
Archimedes.
Yeah, Archimedes. Yeah. Fantastic.
Archimedes, yeah, it was superb. So, and you kind of forget. It's one of those when you fire it up there on say a device as small as a Raspberry Pi, you kind of forget just operating systems back then. If they've been ported to run on modern hardware, they really do fly impressively fast.
Yeah.
It's a delight to use actually. So, but of course, obviously a bit of a shock if you're used to using a modern OS because there's lots of things. One of the things which is in Risc Os 5.28 is more of a system-wide clipboard, which is a thing that we take for granted in modern operating systems. But obviously, it wasn't a thing that we had back in the day.
No.
But I would definitely recommend if you there's also versions for Intel chips as well. But if you've got a Raspberry Pi, particularly a 4, I'd recommend taking the Risc Os out for a spin if you've got any memory of Archimedes days and things, because it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the Archimedes, I never really played a lot with that because it was kind of sort of BBC Micros at school, and then I got into the Amiga, and from Spectrums at home, and then I got into the Amigas, and then went to PC. So I never played Archimedes, but it always looked a fascinating machine, and I remember seeing it on, I guess it would have been Micro Live or one of those BBC type shows in the late 80s. Yeah, it always looked a fascinating machine.
And of course, it was it the first ARM-based one? I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, that was really what how ARM got started, wasn't it?
Yeah, the old Acorn RISC machine stuff. So so a few things there that I've gone through quite quickly. There's the Compute Module 4, which is probably more of interest for integrators, if I'm honest. But I do think the arrival of Ubuntu 2010 with proper desktop support on the Pi 4 is quite important actually. And again, for the enthusiasts, I would just recommend a pop to the Risc Os site and just have a go with an image of Risc Os for the Pi 4, because it does work very, very well, and it does remind you that things don't have to be slow and have slow redraws.
Yeah, it's I might have to give that a try, because I fired my Pi up the other day, and I think it's corrupted the SD card, so it doesn't even do anything. So but I've stuck a different SD card in and now, and it fired up. So I need to repair it. But it's not so easy to repair on a Windows machine.
I would just buy a new SD card. I mean, I picked up like 3 SD cards for about a tenner, I think, and and absolutely fine. But of course, you have to understand that things could corrupt. I mean, one option you have got if you're feeling brave is I think you can flash the firmware of the Pi 4. In fact, I think the Pi 4 8 may even have it on board. I have to check. But you can boot from SSDs via.
Yes, that's right. You can, yeah.
And that obviously is a lot more reliable than using the SD card.
Now, the reason why I fired my Pi up originally was I wanted to try Microsoft Edge out for Linux, which I believe is out for Linux now.
It is, yeah. I had to play with it under Ubuntu. It was fine. It was Edge. I mean, I'd say it's got some honking great things missing from it, particularly the ability to log in with your Windows with your Microsoft account. That was quite bad, because it meant that things like your bookmarks and things wouldn't come down, which was, made it. I hadn't realised how much I'd come to depend on that between devices. It was a real shock when I logged in and thought, lost everything. Oh no. It's a weird one. I'm not entirely sure why they've done it. I mean, ostensibly it's for developers. But I mean, Linux isn't short of Chromium-based browsers, let's face it. So I guess perhaps they're just closing off all the platforms and say we are now everywhere. Although obviously what's on Linux is still very much a preview. And also it only works it won't work on your Pi. There isn't an ARMHF build of Edge yet. So yeah, I mean, maybe you could perhaps try and hack it together with something like KVM or something and try and. I
have not very much luck with KVM, I must admit.
Exactly. So I mean, I do stand to be corrected though. I don't believe it's that there's a native version for the Pi, which is a shame because obviously there is an ARM version of Edge for the Pro X. So I would imagine there's one lurking around somewhere within Microsoft. But getting it actually to the point where it can be released, I doubt is a priority for them at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a bit with you, and I can see like they do it for completeness, but who the target market is for that, I'm not quite sure, because if you're really into the Microsoft ecosystem using Edge, then you're probably running Windows or Android. But for Linux, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's for people like me who are tinkering with another system and just want the convenience of being able to sign in with your Microsoft account and pull down your favourites and passwords.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I think it's also, them trying to come to wherever their developers may be. Hence, you've got Linux versions of lots of things appearing. So, it's I guess it's perhaps the new Microsoft that they will try and be across all platforms, which is in many ways how Microsoft began, wasn't it? Really? Yeah,
exactly. And they also did it with Internet Explorer at one stage was on multiple platforms, wasn't it? It wasn't until they renamed it to Windows Internet. Didn't they rename it as Microsoft Windows Internet Explorer at one stage and got rid of the Mac version?
If only they put the 365 around it as well.
Yeah, it was. They didn't put .NET on it. That was a good thing, which they did everything else at that time. Yeah, I wondered who it's for, but it's good to see Microsoft do it. And I have to say, using Edge full time on Android with the Duo, no problems using Edge at all on that. I mean, I know it's the same rendering engine as Chrome, but I haven't used Chrome at all once on the Surface Duo.
Yeah, I mean, I still keep dropping back into Chrome under Windows, but that's only because I'm a very lazy person and all my bookmarks are there, and I've not migrated them yet.
Oh yeah, I know. I'll tell you what. One good thing as well with Edge is the vertical tabs thing is on nearly all my devices now. So I know you don't like it, but I love it. So I've got them all switched over.
Do you not need to be on the dev channel?
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was only on one of my devices. Despite them all being on the Edge channel, but on the dev channel, but they've Canary I'm on, but they've moved it across, and I actually really like the UI of it.
Well, at the moment, I'm running everything on my production machine. I'm now running everything in production code, so there's no more insider stuff running on this one machine here, and I have to say it's a lot more stable. I hadn't realised how much I've been working around problems, and suddenly it's like everything works really fast now. Oh, it's really stable. It's not crashed for ages.
Yeah, that's why I keep my work machine on release. The Surface laptop that I do all the blogs and editing and everything else is on release preview, and my gaming laptop, which I use for VR driving, is on release. I don't touch that one because it's one of those things where I don't get very often. I've said before, I don't get very much time to play games. So maybe on a Sunday morning, I'll have an hour on the game, and I don't want to spend an hour getting the PC working and then to do 2 laps or something like that. So I leave this alone. So I've got that instant on.
Well, next week I might tell you all about my experiences with the Quest 2.
Oh yes, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that. Yeah, and you're not going to get in trouble for having multiple devices.
No. It's. I'm ashamed to say it's sat in a box behind me. I've not had time to open it this week, so it's just sat there, which is bad. And my Oculus Rift is also in a box. So right now I've got no VR at all. It's disastrous.
Yeah, and I really didn't realise how long it'd been. It's 3 years since I've had the Lenovo headset.
Really? I mean, I guess we're probably due, aren't we, for the
HP Reverb 2. Yeah,
that must be like now, I guess.
Yeah, anytime now, and it is a step forward visually, but in terms of the actual system, there's no really, there's no changes to the actual Windows mixed reality in itself.
Yeah, I heard that Oculus or Facebook would never make another wired headset again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense because you've got that cable option.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and as I say, you get very used to having to being wire free and you think, wow, I could just be playing a more advanced game. Oh, I can't. That's a shame. But speaking of Oculus and Facebook accounts, did you see the Minecraft issue where Microsoft is insisting that Mojang, who are obviously now owned by Microsoft, are going to be migrating all the current players or account holders on the Java edition of Minecraft to have Microsoft accounts.
Oh, they really? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's happening. Well, it's starting. It's all new users will have to have a Microsoft account. The rest will be migrated across, and they'll be sending out. It's going to take months to actually do it. But when it's complete in 2021, if you've not done the migration process, you will not be able to play.
Oh no!
So, but you will get a cape. So that's all good.
Yeah, which is exactly what Facebook are doing, aren't they, with the Oculus accounts?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, although I think with the Oculus accounts, one of the slight problems is not all the games are going to work once you've done the migration, because if you want to start to use your Facebook account, they're not guaranteeing that the games you purchased in the store, all of them may not work because they won't have been changed or had the updates applied to work with the Facebook account. Whereas I think one of the key things with Microsoft and its account in Minecraft is that everything should keep on working. Nothing's going to change, because there's been lots of conspiracy theories about microtransactions and what have you. And it looks like, they've been very upfront saying nothing. It's just about security. And I imagine the old creaky servers that sustained the accounts before, it's probably easier to just say, let's migrate to a Microsoft account, because at least then you can enable things like two-factor authentication. It's in theory more secure, more controllable. So I think it's a bit of a different thing, but still, it's caused some head scratching.
Change. People don't like it.
We don't like change. No, we don't like change. I love change. Change is great. I would just like. I just wish they'd changed the dev chat, the dev chat channel Windows 10 to something a bit more exciting.
Yeah, you want more change.
More change is good.
Yeah, that's exactly that's what we want. Well, I think that's all the stories I had for this week.
Yeah, me too.
Now, you keep promising to tell me that you've got something to tell us next week that I'm going to want to
yes, I have.
spend money on, but you can't tell me yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
Tune in next week.
But yeah, because I can't be buying a Surface Neo or anything else that's coming up this year. So
I can categorically say it's not a Surface Neo. That's fine. no one's getting a Surface Neo this year.
Yeah, the Xbox is a couple of weeks off, isn't it? That's it'll be interesting. I've seen some of the reviews units are starting to go out, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, I'm planning to get either an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5 in the early part of next year. So the examples I've seen looking good. Also, I would think towards in this year, are we not supposed to be seeing some of the first ARM-powered Apple MacBooks?
Possibly, yeah.
They're due fairly soon, I think. I mean, I understand, which I think is going to be very interesting from a Windows perspective, because obviously Windows on ARM has been going on for a while now, and we'll see if Apple can pull the rabbit out of the hat once again with the architecture change. Yeah,
certainly. I think when we were talking to Jeremy last week, he surmised that maybe that's one of the reasons why we suddenly got this fresh impetus with the ARM emulation, the 64-bit emulation of ARM on the Windows 10 on Windows 10 on the Surface X Pro X.
Well, exactly, because you can't really say, "Oh, it can't be done," and then Apple turned around and said, "Here you go."
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, and we'll be interested to see what difference that makes with battery life and power and everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I gather native stuff goes pretty fast, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, we'll look forward to next week to seeing what you entice us with. Maybe I'll try and do some migration, do some work on ARM, Windows on ARM.
Only if you can find your touch keyboard.
Yes, I'm gonna have to go and find my touch keyboard and see if I can really do any work on that. I do remember getting rid of that quite quickly.
Did they ever replace the release of the DJ keyboard they showed that time?
They never did. No,
they never did. That'd have been cool.
Yeah, I'm surprised there still aren't third-party Surface keyboards. It's still not a thing, that is it?
Yeah, I wonder if perhaps there's some proprietary interface there, perhaps.
Yeah, I think they're keeping that for themselves.
Anyway, well,
yeah. So, where can we find you and your pictures of rockets and other things?
You can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed.
Excellent. Well, I'm at iSticks on Twitter, and you can find me on thedislifestyle.com and our YouTube channel. So until next week, we'll see you then.
Cheerio.